Give me the keys. Where do you think you're going? My son's voice was sharp, almost aggressive. I stood at the front door, holding a battered old suitcase, the same one I used back when travel meant something joyful. Now it was the only thing tethering me to a future. Just going for a walk. I lied. He frowned, didn't believe me, but didn't argue. Just turned away, muttering something about old man nonsense. It was December. The wind sliced across my face like a razor. Snow drifted down like ash, coating my coat, my shoes, my memories. I walked without looking back. I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to leave. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. After my wife passed, I moved in with my son. He insisted, "Dad, you can't be alone right now." And like a fool, I believed it was love. I believed there'd be laughter, warmth, grandkids running through the house. Instead, I got silence, cold stares, whispers behind my back. The house turned into a cage. At first, I didn't want to see it, but then I heard it. My daughter-in-law's voice. "He's always in the way." My grandson laughing. "Grandpa's getting shipped off to a home, but not until he hands over the apartment first." I was standing in the hallway when I heard that, pressed against the wall, clutching the doorframe like it could hold me upright. My own grandson, planning how to divvy up what I hadn't even lost yet. That's when I knew I wasn't family. I was a burden, a breathing wallet. But I had one card left to play. That suitcase. It didn't just hold memories. It held power. Stocks from a little tech startup I'd invested in as a joke 20 years ago. I'd forgotten all about them. Big mistake. Now, they were worth millions. I said nothing. I didn't yell. Didn't fight. I waited until midnight. Took the suitcase. Packed my documents, some cash, and a photo of my wife. Then I left. No note. No confrontation. Let them wonder. A week went by. No calls. 2 weeks, still silence. But then on the third, the phone exploded with missed calls and panicked voicemails. First, "Dad, where are you?" Then, "You're being ridiculous." "Oh, man." Finally, begging, because they found out. That house? It's still in my name. Those accounts? Not empty. And me? I wasn't gone. I was done. I found a small cottage by the sea. Quiet. Warm. The kind of place you go to heal. I started writing letters to my grandkids. Real letters on paper. Telling them the truth. Someday they'll grow up. They'll understand. And they'll get everything. Every last dime. Not their parents. Today, December 18th, I got a security alert. Someone tried to access my bank account. They're getting desperate. But it's too late. The trust one created with an old student, now a lawyer, is locked in. Every penny is protected. My revenge has already begun. Then the phone rang. It was my grandson's number. I answered. "Grandpa," his voice was trembling. "Please, you have to hear us out." I stared at the phone like it might explode. Hearing his voice again, after everything, made my chest tighten. Not from emotion. From fury, I was still learning how to hold back. "You want me to hear you out now?" I said calmly. Too calmly. After planning to dump me in some nursing home like a piece of junk furniture? There was a pause on the other end. Long hesitant. "Grandpa, it wasn't like that," he said. "Dad was just confused. We didn't mean it." I laughed. Short. Cold. The kind of laugh that tells a man he's already lost. "You were on the phone, kid." I heard every word. "Let him sign over the apartment first. Remember that?" Another silence. This time heavier. Then, "We didn't know you were listening." I didn't respond. Let the weight of that truth settle in. I could almost hear him squirming. "Listen," he continued. "Mom's been crying. Dad's losing sleep. They're scared. You vanished in the middle of the night, and now nobody knows what you're planning." "Good," I said, and hung up. That afternoon, I drove into town. My car's heater barely worked, but the cold kept me sharp. I met Mark, the lawyer who helped me set up the trust. He used to sweep floors at my workshop 30 years ago. Now, he wore Italian suits and drove a Tesla. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. Every asset you have, locked in for your grandkids. Not your son, not your daughter-in-law, not even if they beg. That's the point, I said. I don't want begging. I want silence. I want them to feel what I felt that night. He nodded. They're going to come after you. Legally. Emotionally. Every way they know how. I smiled. Let them try. 3 days later, I got a letter. Not a call. Not an email. A printed, carefully worded letter on thick stationery. My son's name in sharp cursive at the bottom. He'd never handwritten a single thing in his life. That was her, his wife. Every word smelled of her perfume. The kind that pretends to be sweet, but stings the lungs. Dad, it read, we understand you're upset. Please come back. We can fix this as a family. The kids miss you. We miss you. Let's talk. Love, your son. I crumpled it, tossed it in the fire, let them feel the warmth of paper and lies. I spent the next few weeks in peace. Woke with the sun, took walks by the ocean, started painting again. Nothing fancy, just trees, water, a pier that reminded me of my wife. But one morning, walking back from the shore, I saw a car parked near my mailbox. A black SUV, too new, too clean, tinted windows. I knew that shape. I built a life identifying silhouettes from a distance. That wasn't coincidence. That was surveillance. I didn't approach, didn't wave, just walked past with my grocery bag like I didn't see a thing. I watched the rearview mirror of my house for 2 hours. Nothing moved until nightfall. That's when I found a letter. It was tucked under my front door mat, barely visible. No stamp, no envelope, just one line on torn notebook paper. If you don't give it up, we'll take another way. I stood there on my porch, the cold biting through my sleeves, the ocean wind howling like a warning. I read the note 3 times. Calm at first, then slower, then again. I wasn't afraid, but I knew exactly what came next, because the very next morning, someone tried to break into my house. It happened at 2:47 a.m. I know because I was awake, still in my reading chair with the fireplace dying out and a half-drunk glass of water in my hand. Something made me sit up straight. Not fear. Instinct. The sound was faint, but sharp, like metal on metal. I didn't move, just listened. I'd lived too many years to mistake the rhythm of an animal outside for a man's hand testing a window latch. They thought I'd be sleeping. They thought I was just an old man too slow to react. They were wrong. I stood, quiet as I could, stepped barefoot across the creaking floorboards, and reached behind the bookshelf. The shotgun was right where I kept it since I moved in, clean, loaded, and legal. I didn't need to fire it. Just racked the slide once, loud enough to echo off the walls. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then quick steps retreating into the darkness outside. I didn't chase. I didn't need to. The message was sent. I'm not your victim. The next morning, I called Mark, told him what happened. He wanted me to file a police report. I refused. Why? He asked. Because I don't want them scared, I said. I want them confident. I want them to think they still have a chance. You're baiting them, he said. Damn right. That afternoon, I installed cameras. Bought them cash at a store an hour away. Motion sensors, night vision, cloud storage. Took me 5 hours to wire it all myself, just like I used it back in the workshop days. By sundown, I could see every inch of my property from my phone. If they came back, I'd know. And this time, I'd be ready with more than a shotgun. By the end of the week, they started showing cracks. My son called. Not the fake warm tone from before. This one was ice and frustration. Dad, what are you doing? People are talking. The house, the accounts. Why would you do this to your family? I didn't answer right away. Just let him twist in the silence. You mean, why did I stop being your walking wallet? I finally said, because I heard you. I heard every word. I know what you and your wife planned. He was quiet, then said, it was just talk. People vent. You took it too far. I'm just getting started, I said, and hung up. That same night, I saw her car parked down the street. My daughter-in-law, alone, windows rolled down, lights off, waiting, watching. She didn't come to the door. Just sat there for an hour, probably hoping I'd come out, that I'd break first. I didn't. Instead, I did something she never expected. I invited someone over. A young man in his 30s. Clean cut, wore a suit without looking stiff. His name was Alan. He was my lawyer's nephew and a journalist. Investigative. Hungry for the kind of stories no one wants to talk about out loud. He'd been briefed already. Knew the stakes. Knew the silence I'd endured. And he wanted the exclusive. We talked for 4 hours. I showed him the trust documents, the messages, the letters, the threats. I played him the voicemail my son left last night, the part where he screamed, "If you keep pushing this, you're going to regret it." Alan took notes, recorded audio. He asked questions like a detective. Careful, focus. He asked if I wanted revenge or redemption. I said both. He said he'd call me in 2 days with a plan. But that call never came. Because that night, Alan's apartment was broken into, and every file related to me was taken. Every recording, every note, every backup. And when I turned on the news the next morning, Alan was missing. They found his car 2 blocks from his apartment. Doors unlocked. Laptop gone. Phone gone. Key still in the ignition. No signs of a struggle, but everyone knew what it was. This wasn't random. Alan was careful. He'd send me a text the night before, backing up everything to the cloud, just in case. That text was the last thing I ever got from him. The reporters barely mentioned me. Just said Alan was working on an expose involving elder exploitation. That's what they called it. Exploitation. As if it were a fancy term for betrayal. I sat there watching the news with my coffee going cold, heart thudding slow and heavy. I brought him into this. I should have protected him better. But the moment I saw the headline, "Journalist vanishes while investigating family wealth dispute," I knew I was dealing with something far darker than greed. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting to survive. They were getting reckless. Desperate. That meant they were scared. And fear made people stupid. I changed all my passwords, encrypted everything, and bought a second phone, one they didn't know about. I drove 3 towns over to rent a P.O. box under a different name. I wasn't going underground. I was digging in. I called Mark, told him what happened. He cursed under his breath. "You think they did this? You think they didn't?" I said, "He vanished the day after talking to me. Everything he had on this story is gone." Mark didn't argue. "We need to escalate. Already working on it." I said, I started leaving bait. Carefully. Subtle digital breadcrumbs. A few old bank statements accidentally left unsecured. A fake password list hidden in an easy-to-find folder. I wanted to see who took the bait. 3 days later, I got my answer. An IP address pinged my decoy file from a coffee shop 5 minutes from my son's office. Rookie mistake. He was sloppy. He was watching me, tracking me, trying to find a way in. But now I had proof. That gave me power. The next week, I hosted a little gathering. Nothing fancy. Just a couple of neighbors, the mailman, and a woman from the local community board. I needed eyes, witnesses, people who could say, "No, he wasn't paranoid. We were there." My son drove by twice during that get-together. I saw his car circle, saw the brake lights flash. He didn't stop. Coward. He knew I was watching too. Then I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No name, no subject, just a photo of me taken from behind the bushes outside my house. Time-stamped, dated, last night. I stared at the screen, rage boiling in my gut. They'd come onto my land. They'd stood close enough to smell the smoke from my chimney, close enough to hear me breathe. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up with the lights off, gun across my lap, watching cameras on my phone. Nothing moved. Nothing blinked. Just wind and waves and the creaking of my old house settling around me until 4:03 a.m. That's when the motion sensor on the back porch lit up. The camera feed popped open automatically. I froze. There was someone standing there. Not sneaking. Not running. Just standing. Hood up. Head down. Face hidden. Silent. I reached for my gun. My heart thudded like a drum. But then something happened I didn't expect. They slowly raised one hand and held up a phone. My number was on the screen. They were calling me, and when I picked up, I heard my wife's voice whisper, "They're coming for you next." I froze. That voice, her voice, sent a cold pulse through my chest that reached all the way to my spine. But it couldn't be. My wife had been gone 3 years. I'd buried her with my own hands, picked out the headstone, kissed her forehead one last time in that hospital room. I knew what death looked like. I knew what grief tasted like. So how the hell was she whispering through a phone held by a shadow outside my porch? "Who is this?" I demanded, but the line had already gone dead. The figure vanished from the camera before I could blink. Just like that. Gone. I bolted out the back door with the gun in one hand and the phone in the other, barefoot on cold planks. Nothing. Just footprints in the frost. One set. Light steps. Too small to be my son. Too graceful to be one of his hired goons. Whoever they were, they wanted to rattle me, and they succeeded. But they made a mistake. They used her voice. That was sacred. That was the one thing they shouldn't have touched. I called Mark first thing that morning and told him everything. He didn't try to explain it away. "It's psychological warfare," he said. "They're trying to make you question reality, push you into a panic, so you do something rash." I paced while we talked, looking out at the gray waves crashing below the cliff. "They're getting creative." I said, "What happens when creative turns violent?" "That's why I'm moving the trust offshore," he replied. "They won't be able to touch a scent, no matter what they do to scare you. I've seen this before, believe it or not, but never from family." That last word hit harder than I expected. Family. What a joke that word had become. I spent the next 3 days reviewing every file, every note, every piece of surveillance. I rewatched the footage of the hooded figure on the porch 10 times. The way they stood, the way they held the phone. Calm, calculated, not a thug. This was someone who knew me, knew what would shake me. And then I found it, buried in the audio from the phone call. A tiny blip at the end of the whisper. I slowed it down, ran it through software. It wasn't just my wife's voice. It was a recording, an old one, from a video we took together years ago at the lake. I remembered the day. She'd said those exact words while holding my hand, smiling. "They're coming for you next," she joked, talking about a card game we were playing with the neighbors. And now they'd twisted it into a threat. That meant they had access to my old hard drives, which meant someone close to me had stolen them. I checked my backup locker in town. Empty. Cleaned out. The clerk said a man claiming to be my assistant had come 2 weeks ago with a signed letter, my signature forged, the surveillance tape conveniently corrupted. Of course, I knew exactly who was behind it, and it wasn't my son. It was her, my daughter-in-law, the mastermind. She'd always been the one with the fake smiles, the soft hands hiding sharp claws. She'd built this entire scheme like a spiderweb. My son didn't have the spine for something this intricate. He was just a puppet. She was a hand. That night, I opened a bottle I'd been saving for years. Not to celebrate, to mark the moment. The line had been crossed. This wasn't about property or money anymore. This was war, and wars need soldiers. I made a list of names. Old contacts from my working years. Men and women who owed me favors. People who operated in the gray spaces between the law and justice. I didn't want revenge. I wanted resolution. I wanted protection. I wanted peace, earned through fire if necessary. The next morning, I left my house for the first time in days. Drove into town. Picked up a burner phone. New number. Clean slate. I called the first name on my list. He answered on the third ring. "Well, damn, I thought you were dead," he said. "Not yet," I replied. "But if you got any free time this week, I might need your particular set of skills." He laughed. "For you? Always." I returned home feeling sharper, more alive than I had in years, until I pulled into the driveway and saw the front door wide open, not kicked in, just open. No broken lock. No sign of forced entry. I walked up slow, gun drawn, heart pounding like a war drum. Inside, everything looked untouched, except for one thing. The portrait of my wife was gone from the mantel, and in its place was a photo of me, asleep in my bed. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there staring at the photo, like it might lunge off the mantel and attack me. It was me. Definitely me. Curled on my side under a green quilt, mouth slightly open, the old lamp casting a faint glow across the room. My bedroom. My bed. The photo had been taken from inside the house, from the foot of my bed. That realization hit like a gut punch. Someone had been in my room, not outside the window, not hiding on the porch. Inside, while I slept, they'd stood there, camera in hand, inches from me, watched me breathe, listened to the silence of my dreams. And I never knew. The gun felt heavier in my hand. The air inside the house turned thick, choking, like it wasn't meant for lungs. Whoever they weren't just sending messages anymore. They were laying claim to my space, my peace, my mind. I checked the cameras. Nothing. The footage was wiped clean between 1:11 a.m. and 2:06 a.m. smart. Too smart. They'd come with blinders for the system. That meant military training or black market tech. Either way, they had help. My old crew wouldn't be surprised. Back in the day, we built entire systems to fool high-end security. Now I was on the receiving end of my own kind of warfare. Poetic, but not appreciated. I called Mark, told him exactly what happened. "Don't stay there another night," he said. "I mean it. I'll book you a place under a dummy name. Just get out." But I didn't move. I couldn't. This wasn't just my home. It was my last stand. If I ran, I'd never stop running. That's what they wanted, to scare me into disappearing, so they could clean up the mess. I wasn't going anywhere. Instead, I called Marcus, the contact I'd phoned yesterday. He showed up 2 hours later in a black pickup with no plates. Wore jeans, a faded army jacket, and eyes like polished steel. He walked the perimeter, checked every door, every window, pulled 2 hidden bugs from under my front steps and a third from my mailbox. "Professional grade," he muttered. "You pissed off someone with serious resources." "Family," I said flatly. "That explains it," he replied with a bitter grin. "Only family gets close enough to bury the knife deep." We worked through the night, reinforced the doors, installed motion-triggered traps, non-lethal but effective. Marcus even rigged a pressure-sensitive sensor on the stairs that triggered a silent alert to my phone if anyone so much as leaned too hard on the banister. "Anyone comes in here again," he said, "you'll know before they take their second breath." I nodded. Still, sleep didn't come easy. By morning, I looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in one night. I barely noticed a knock on the door until the third round. I opened it with my hand on the grip of my sidearm. But it wasn't a threat. It was the mail carrier. Nervous, younger guy, shifting from foot to foot. "Sir, this was in your box, wasn't from us. No return address." He handed me a thin envelope. Plain, ordinary. But I knew better than to trust appearances now. I opened it on the porch, letting the cold air sting my face. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, no greeting, no signature. It read, "You've made this harder than it had to be. You should have taken the offer. We gave you one last chance to do this the quiet way. That time is gone. Now it gets loud." There was a number at the bottom. I didn't recognize it. No area code, just a string of digits. Marcus looked over my shoulder. "Encrypted burner line," he said. "Whatever they want to say next, it won't be polite." I dialed it anyway. The voice that answered wasn't my son. It wasn't her either. It was someone new. Calm, deep, almost bored. "You've been busy," the voice said. "Let's see how you handle being hunted." And then I heard it, live in the background, my doorbell ringing. Someone was already at the back door. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. Just slowly turned toward the sound as the doorbell echoed through the house a second time. My finger stayed on the trigger guard, tight but steady. Marcus was already moving, silent as a shadow, disappearing down the hallway toward the back with a knife in one hand and his sidearm in the other. The third ring came, long and deliberate, like whoever was out there knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't here to sneak in. They wanted us to feel it. The pressure, the countdown. They wanted me to make the first move. I didn't. I watched the front feed on my tablet. Nothing. The cameras showed nothing. Black screen. Feed interrupted. I tapped again. Still nothing. Someone had jammed the signal. Marcus appeared in the hallway. Shook his head once. No one at the back. I mouthed one word. Diversion? He nodded. That's when we heard it. A soft thump from the roof. Not loud, but real. Someone was above us. Not one of those Hollywood crash through the window types. This was quieter, tactical, precise. The sound of a pro. I motioned Marcus toward the attic stairwell. He moved fast. I stood in the living room, every hair on my arms raised. Whoever this was, they weren't here for a conversation. I could feel it in the way the house held its breath. I backed into corner, forcing my profile out of every window. One wrong step, and I'd be a clean shot from any angle. That's when the lights flickered. The house lost power. Everything went dark. No hum, no warmth, no safety net. My ears picked up every creak in the wood, every shift in the wind outside. I activated the emergency backup on my tablet. Battery powered, separate grid. Still no feed. They hadn't just knocked out power. They'd taken out every eye I had. From above, the crash came sudden. Something heavy landing in the attic. A foot, then two, and the low sound of dragging. Marcus shouted. A single curse. Then silence. I raised my weapon, heart pounding. Marcus. I called. No answer. I took one step toward the hall, and that's when the front door burst open. And standing there was my grandson, holding my wife's wedding ring, covered in blood. He stood in the doorway like a ghost, pale, trembling, breathing hard. My wife's ring dangled from his fingers, red with something that looked far too fresh to be paint. He was 16 last time I saw him. Long legs, cocky smile, always asking questions. Now he looked hollow, worn, eyes too dark, too old for someone that young. I didn't lower my weapon. Close the door, I said quietly. He didn't move, just stood there shivering, like he hadn't even realized he was outside in the cold. Please, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know they were going to hurt him. My chest tightened. I stepped forward one slow foot at a time, keeping my gun level but easing my voice. Who, son? Who did this? Where's Marcus? He swallowed hard. His throat clicked. Upstairs. I tried to stop them. She said it wouldn't go that far. She said we just had to scare you. His lip trembled. But they had knives. They laughed. Grandpa, they laughed. I moved fast, pushed past him into the hallway, up the attic stairs two at a time. The stench hit me first. Metallic. Hot. Wrong. Then the sight. Marcus sprawled across the attic floorboards, blood pooling around his leg. Alive. Moaning. But barely. His eyes flicked to me and tried to focus. One of them, still here, he rasped. Didn't leave. I knelt beside him, checked the wound. Deep slash. Artery just missed. Barely. You're gonna be okay. I lied. You're gonna be fine. His eyes closed. I dragged him down, step by step, propping him in the hallway. I called emergency services from my burner. No name. No questions. Just coordinates. Then I turned to my grandson. Start talking. I said, all of it. Now. He did. He told me everything. How his mother had recruited him. Made it sound like a game. Watch Grandpa, she said. Tell us where he goes, who he talks to, what he keeps in the house. At first, it was small things. A camera hidden in the vent. A tracking device slipped in my coat. But when I went off-grid, started pushing back, she panicked. Started talking about pressure, about options. Then came the others. Strangers. Men with clean shoes and no names. They brought plans, timelines, threats. One man in particular, the one who stood on my back porch that night, he wasn't like the rest. He's not scared of anything, my grandson whispered. He talked about you like you were already dead. Why the ring? I asked. He looked down, ashamed. She gave it to him. Said it would mess with your head. Told me to put it on the mantle if they got inside. He dropped it. I picked it up. I didn't know where else to go. Sirens howled in the distance. Not just one. 2, 3. They were coming fast. I pulled my grandson into the kitchen, sat him down, gave him water. His hands shook so bad he spilled half of it. You did the right thing coming here, I said, but we're not safe yet. They don't quit. He nodded. I know. He said there's more coming. He said the real team shows up tomorrow. I looked at the clock. 3:14 a.m. I had less than 24 hours. Then the power surged back on. The lights flickered. Screens rebooted. And every single camera showed the same live feed, every angle, every room, frozen on a new image. My daughter-in-law, standing in my living room, alone, smiling at the camera, holding a match. And behind her, my house in flames. The image burned brighter than the flames behind her. Her smile wasn't wild or vengeful. It was calm, icy, like a woman who'd already accepted the outcome and was simply following a script. The match in her hand danced with firelight, one small spark away from turning my entire life to ash. I stood frozen in the kitchen, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Marcus bleeding in the hallway, my grandson slumped in a chair barely holding together, and now this. Her, the puppeteer stepping into the spotlight. I reached for my tablet, tried to trace the feed, but it wasn't coming from my cameras. The interface had changed. This was a hijack, a live broadcast she was feeding directly to my system. Then she spoke. Her voice rang out through every device in the house, crisp and smooth like she was hosting a TED Talk. You should have stayed gone, Dad, she said. This didn't have to end this way. But now you've left us no choice. Behind her, the flames licked higher. I couldn't tell if it was real or pre-recorded. My house wasn't on fire yet, but this was a message, a promise, a test run for the main event. The feed went black. Marcus groaned from the hallway, and I ran to him. The paramedics arrived seconds later, kicking to the front door like thunder. I let them work, let them load him into the ambulance with pressure bandages and 4 lines. One of the techs paused long enough to say, "He's lucky. Another inch, and he wouldn't have made it." "I know," I said. "Believe me, I know." After they left, I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the hum of refrigeration and old wiring settling back in. My grandson hadn't said a word since the broadcast. He just sat there, staring at the floor. "Do you believe me now?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah, I believe you." He looked up, tears streaking down his face. "She said it was about money, but it's not. She wants to erase you. She wants you gone, like you were never part of this family." That hit harder than I expected. Erased, deleted, not even hated, just removed, like a virus in the code. I took a breath and walked into my office, pulled open the safe hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside was a sealed folder, thick, dusty. I hadn't touched it in nearly a decade. Operation Cinderbox, a contingency I created during my contracting years in case everything ever went to hell. It contained names, accounts, identities, mine and others. It wasn't just escape. It was control, influence. I built this for enemies. I never imagined I'd use it against family. I spent the next 10 hours locked in that room. Phone calls, encrypted messages, password resets. I activated dormant files, put eyes in places no one could reach. I made a list, a real one this time, not names to fear, names to use. Allies, power brokers, debt holders, people with teeth. By the time the sun rose, the house was silent again. The only sound was the ocean outside and the quiet breathing of my grandson asleep on the couch. I hadn't slept, couldn't. Every second mattered now. I packed a go bag, loaded the car, backed it into the garage. Then I found the burner phone buzzing. One message, coordinates, a time, no sender. The location was a warehouse near the docks. The time, 3 p.m. today. I knew what this was. An invitation, a trap, or both. But I'd be there. I had no choice. Because attached to the message was a photo. Blurry. Rushed. It was Jessica, my wife, alive. And she was crying. It wasn't possible. My fingers trembled as I zoomed in on the photo. Her face was thinner, older, but unmistakable. Jessica, the woman I'd buried, the woman I mourned. She was crying, bound to a chair in what looked like a dark concrete room, lit by a single overhead bulb. Her eyes were swollen, but her expression, God, it was real. This wasn't fake. This wasn't AI. I knew that face better than my own. I collapsed into the nearest chair, the wind knocked clean out of me. For minutes I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even feel the cold seeping through the floor. Everything I believed about the past 3 years shattered in a blink. I stumbled into the kitchen, grabbed the counter for balance, and tried to make sense of the chaos inside my skull. I'd seen her body, signed the papers. There was a funeral. There was a coffin. I remember holding her hand in the hospital after they turned off the machines. So what the hell was this? Marcus had once warned me, never underestimate what money can buy if you know who to ask. I thought he meant lawyers and hackers. Maybe he meant something else entirely. Identity swaps? Fake deaths? Or worse, maybe she hadn't died at all. Maybe I'd buried someone else. Or maybe I'd buried the truth. The warehouse location wasn't random. It was one we used back in my Black Ops contracting days. An abandoned shell by the docks, perfect for meetings that weren't meant to be remembered. The coordinates weren't just a location. They were a message. Someone knew who I was before I was grandpa. Someone from my past. Which meant this went deeper than inheritance or petty family betrayal. Someone had been watching for a long time. I packed fast. Tactical gear. No electronics. Just analog backups. Hard cash, burner phones, and 2 sidearms. I kissed my grandson on the head before I left. Stay hidden. Don't answer the door. You move only when I call. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. The boy had seen enough now to understand. I reached the warehouse by 2:48 p.m. The place looked dead. No lights. No sound. Just a call of gulls circling overhead and the creak of rusted metal. I circled the perimeter twice. Found no tracks, no fresh tire marks. But the main sliding door was unlocked. That was the invitation. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and salt. Broken pallets, old tools, and a flood of shadows. The smell of oil. I moved slow, deliberate, step by step. The ticking of my watch was the only sound. Then I saw the light, far in the back. A single bulb swinging above a makeshift table. A metal chair beneath it. And in that chair, her, Jessica. She looked up as I approached. Her mouth gagged, eyes wide. She tried to scream through it. I rushed forward, but stopped when the voice rang out behind me. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I turned, and there he was, the man from the porch, the voice on the burner call, broad shoulders, calm eyes, wearing my son's watch. "You've been busy, old man," he said, stepping into the light. "But now it's checkmate." I raised my gun. He smiled. "Shoot me, and you never learn what she knows." I hesitated. Jessica whimpered. Then, from behind the crates, a second figure stepped out, and my heart stopped. It was me, standing there, younger, alive, smiling. I blinked. Once, twice. The image didn't change. He stepped forward slowly, calm, relaxed, like he just walked off the cover of my past. Same scar on the jawline, same faded tattoo on the wrist. My eyes, my gait, my damn smirk. "Hello, William," he said. His voice mine, only younger, sharper, more dangerous. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My brain scrambled for logic. Clone? Double? An elaborate prosthetic setup? AI projection? But this wasn't tech. This man was breathing, sweating, real. He moved like I used to, when my knees didn't creak and my hands didn't shake. "You look surprised," he said, circling around me like a lion sizing up a wounded version of himself. I would be too. But the truth is, you made me. You just don't remember. What the hell are you talking about? I finally asked, my voice dry and cracked. Jessica whimpered again behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't afford to. The first man, the one with my son's watch, stepped aside like a bodyguard yielding to royalty. It was 1992. The younger version of me said, Black Site, South America. You remember the mission. You just don't remember the insurance policy. They called it Project Gemini. My stomach flipped. I hadn't heard that name in decades. A classified off-the-books operation that disappeared after a rogue incident. I was told the files were destroyed, that everyone involved was silenced. Apparently not. You were the prototype, he continued. The best we had. So they made a copy. A genetic mirror. Me. But then you got cold feet. You pulled the plug. Thought it was over. He smiled. It wasn't. I was transferred, trained, upgraded. And when the government lost interest, guess who picked up the contract? He pointed to my chest. Your lovely family. Or what's left of it. My knees threatened to give out. The walls around me warped, not physically, but mentally. They bought you? I asked. Rented, technically. Your son paid well for a ghost. Someone to erase the past. Someone who knew how you thought. Moved. Fought. Behind me, Jessica sobbed harder now. I turned halfway, keeping my weapon up. Why her? I barked. Why fake her death? Why this circus? He sighed like it bored him. She found out. Years ago. About me. About the money. About your son's plan. She was going to warn you. So they buried her. But not deep enough. I found her later. Saved her. And waited. Because I knew you'd come back. You always do. The first man finally spoke. It's simple, old man. We take your name. Your identity. Your legacy. You disappear. Quietly. And the world forgets. I laughed. A dry, bitter thing. You want my legacy? I asked. You'll have to pry it from my hands. Younger me grinned. Gladly. He raised his hand. Suddenly, the warehouse door behind us slammed shut. Locks engaged. A female voice echoed from the shadows. No one's going anywhere. And out stepped my granddaughter, holding a detonator, wired to the entire building. She stepped into the flickering light like a phantom made of steel. Hair tied back, eyes cold, focus calm. She was 17 the last time I saw her, laughing in the backyard with a popsicle in hand. Now she stood in combat boots, hoodie, gloves, holding a black box with a single red button. My granddaughter. Emma. Her voice was steady. Back away from her. Grandpa. Now. I lowered my weapon but didn't drop it. Emma. I said slowly, my throat tight. You don't want to do this. She tilted her head. You think I don't know who you are? What you've done? The people you hurt? The things you buried? She glanced at the younger version of me with something close to pity. You thought cloning yourself was the worst of it? No. The worst thing you ever did was lie to all of us. Jessica let out a choked sob behind me, as if she'd only just recognized her own granddaughter. Emma, baby, please, don't. Emma snapped. Don't pretend this is some kind of reunion. I watched you rot in a fake grave for 3 years. You let us believe you were gone. You let him grieve. She pointed at me with the detonator. You let all of us suffer. You don't understand, I said, stepping forward cautiously. They used us all. Your father, me, you. They pulled strings none of us could see. And you cut those strings, she said, voice colder now. You cut them and left us hanging. You were supposed to protect us. Grandpa. Instead, you ran. And when they couldn't find you, they found me. My heart seized. What? 2 years ago, she whispered. They took me, trained me, broke me, rebuilt me, said if I ever wanted answers, real answers, I had to prove I could earn them. I've been watching you, reporting everything, and now they want an ending. The younger version of me watched it all with a grin. She's impressive, isn't she? Took to it faster than I did. I barely heard him. My eyes were locked on hers. "Emma," I said softly, "that's not you. That's them. This thing you're holding, that's their final move, not yours." She stared at the detonator, thumb twitching over the button. "You're wrong," she said. "For the first time in my life, this is mine." Then the doors behind us exploded inward. Flashbangs, shouts, boots pounding concrete. Smoke filled the warehouse. Red laser sights cut through the dark. Federal agents. On the ground. Chaos erupted. Emma dove behind a crate. My clone vanished into the shadows like smoke. Jessica screamed. I tackled her to the floor as bullets cracked overhead. But one voice rose through the noise, clear and commanding, right beside me. "William Carr, you're under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and the unauthorized continuation of Project Gemini." I turned and saw the one face I never expected. My wife, Jessica, wearing a federal badge, pointing a gun at my head. My world collapsed in a single breath. Jessica, my Jessica, standing over me, weapon raised, badge gleaming in the smoke-filled light, eyes stone cold. The woman I mourned, the woman I thought I failed, had been hunting me the entire time. "You're making a mistake," I said, barely able to get the words out. "You don't know what they've told you." "I know exactly what they told me," she cut in, voice hard. "Because I told them first." My blood turned to ice. "What?" "The moment I found out what you'd done," she continued, lowering the barrel slightly, "I made a choice. You didn't tell me about Gemini, about the duplications, about the secrets. I lived beside a ghost for decades, Will. I buried our friends. I cleaned up your messes. And when they came to me asking for help, I gave it. The floor beneath me felt like it was tilting. You worked with them?" "I didn't work with them," she said. "I helped create them." Flashbangs still echoed through the distant corridors. Gunfire crackled near the entrance. Somewhere behind the crates, Emma screamed someone's name. My clone was gone, vanished like smoke. But none of that mattered. Not anymore. Jessica, the woman I trusted with everything, was standing over me as both judge and executioner. "They were never supposed to find you," she said. "I fought to keep you buried. But you came back. You always come back. And now, you've burned everything we built." I looked up into her eyes. "So what now? You pull the trigger? Finish the mission? That it?" Jessica hesitated. Just for a moment, her jaw clenched. Her grip shifted. Then another voice cut through the haze. "Drop the weapon. Agent Carr, he's coming with us." Two agents in black tactical armor moved into view. High clearance. No unit badges. Just matte black helmets and suppressed rifles. Real ghosts. The kind that didn't file reports. One of them stepped forward, held out a palm toward Jessica. "He's not yours anymore. He's federal property now." Jessica didn't lower the gun. "The hell he is." The lead agent raised his voice. "We have orders from the director. He's being extracted. You've been compromised." That hit her like a slap. Her body stiffened. "Excuse me?" "You went too deep," the agent said. "Your attachment compromised the mission. Your judgment is no longer reliable. Step away." For a moment, I thought she might shoot him. Instead, she turned back to me, eyes blazing. "You have no idea what you've started," she hissed. "No idea what's coming." The agent grabbed my arm, pulling me to my feet. I tried to resist, but there were too many. They shoved me into a reinforced vehicle waiting outside, slammed the doors shut, and locked me in. We drove for hours. No windows, no voices, just a rumble of tires on forgotten roads. When they finally stopped, they pulled me out into darkness. Somewhere remote, snow-covered. They dragged me through steel doors into a freezing corridor lit with dull red lights. At the end, a room, empty except for one thing, a massive glass wall. On the other side, dozens of me, clones, some sleeping, some standing, all watching, and one of them smiled. "Welcome home, William. We've been waiting." I stood frozen, staring through the thick glass as versions of myself stared back. It was like looking into a shattered mirror, each reflection slightly different. Some younger, some older. One had a scar I didn't recognize. Another wore a suit like he belonged in a boardroom. All of them were me, but none of them were human in the way I remembered being. They moved too smoothly, too deliberately, like they didn't blink unless it served a purpose. One leaned forward, pressed his palm against the glass, and mouthed the word, home. That's when I understood this wasn't a prison. It was a showroom. The agent who brought me in didn't say a word, just stood behind me like a shadow. I turned to him. How long has this been going on? He didn't respond. I asked again. How long? Since you failed. A voice answered, not his. It came through a hidden speaker above the door. Since you left the program. Since you betrayed what we created. The voice was familiar. Calm. Slow. I recognized it almost instantly. Director Langford. I muttered. He'd been my handler back in the early Black Ops days. Supposedly retired. Dead. Even. But nothing really dies in this world. It just gets buried deeper. The door beside me hissed open. I didn't wait to be invited. I stepped inside. Langford stood in the center of the room, white hair slicked back, hands folded behind him. A wall of monitors behind him displayed various data. Brain scans, heat maps, surveillance feeds. One monitor showed my grandson. Another, Emma, being watched, tracked, tagged. You bastard, I said. He smiled faintly. You should be proud. Everything you see here is because of you. Your genes, your mind, your instincts. You stole my life. No, he said. We enhanced it. You walked away, left potential rotting in a cabin by the sea. We gave it purpose. You made monsters. I snapped. They aren't human. He nodded. Correct. They're better. He stepped closer. You were the best we had, William. But you were still just a man. There's something more. The next step. Project Gemini was never about creating copies. It was about creating successors. I felt cold to my bones. And what happened to the original? He shrugged. You had your time. Now you serve a new one. He turned to the glass wall. They've been waiting for your return. Some remember pieces of your life. We call it bleed through, memories leaking through the genome. It's what makes them dangerous and perfect. One of the clones stepped forward. This one looked exactly like I did 20 years ago, before the gray, before the limp, before the world stole my softness. He raised his hand and pointed at me. Designation Alpha 1. Langford said, he's your replacement. Trained. Upgraded. He knows your moves. Your thoughts. Your weaknesses. Then he knows I don't go down easy, I said. Langford smiled wider. Good. Because you're going to fight him. Behind me, a hatch opened, and two agents shoved Jessica into the room, wrists bound, lip bleeding. Langford nodded toward her. And if you win, she lives. But if you lose, she becomes the first breeder for the next generation of you. I didn't even think. I launched at Langford, shoulder first. But he was already moving, stepping back into the shadows like a man who'd watched this scene play out 100 times. Two guards intercepted me mid-swing, forcing me down with practiced ease. My face hit the cold metal floor, and before I could twist free, something sharp jabbed into my neck. A flash of pain, a pulse of heat, then black. Not unconsciousness, not sleep, just stillness. When I opened my eyes, I was in a new room. Brighter, colder, a cage disguised as a training facility. Jessica was gone. Langford was gone. But Alpha, one stood on the other side of the room, shirtless, barefoot, fists clenched like a coiled snake waiting to strike. He tilted his head slightly, watching me like a puzzle. I stood slowly. Every muscle ached. My thoughts were fogged not from the drug, but from rage trying to push its way out of my skin. Where is she? I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. A door opened above us on a balcony. Langford leaned over the rail. Voice amplified through the intercom. Fight begins on my mark. First man standing walks out. The other becomes obsolete. I looked around. No weapons. Just fists, instincts, and the years that separated us. Alpha, one took a step forward. I saw it in his eyes. No fear, no hesitation, just calculation. I didn't just have to beat him. I had to outthink a version of myself built without the flaws of doubt, pain, empathy. A version that was all predator. Begin, Langford said. He moved first. Fast, blindingly fast. A spinning elbow that would have shattered my jaw if I hadn't dropped low. I rolled. Came up with a gut punch that landed but didn't faze him. He grinned. A part of me hated that smirk. It was mine. I saw every mistake I'd ever made staring back at me through his eyes. He countered with a flurry of strikes. Precise, efficient. I blocked two, ate the third. Blood filled my mouth. You're tired, he said. Voice deadpan. Slower than memory. Still got more memory than you ever will. I spat and grabbed his wrist, twisting hard. Bone cracked. He didn't scream. Just headbutt me with the grace of a trained killer. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I hit the ground. He pounced. Everything after that was instinct. Teeth, elbows, broken knuckles, and breathless grunts. We rolled, slammed, twisted. Blood soaked the floor, and I couldn't tell whose was whose anymore. I got one good shot to his throat, and he gasped like a machine that hadn't learned how to fail yet. But he recovered too fast. He slammed me into the wall, held me by the throat. You're done, he said. I smiled through the pain. Maybe, but you're not ready for the dirt. And I jammed my thumb into his eye. He shrieked. Not human. Not quite. Just enough for me to slam him to the floor and choke him out. One hand. All my weight. Rage was my oxygen. Rage was my rhythm. And finally, he stopped moving. The room went silent. Langford didn't speak. But the door opened. Jessica stood there, free, bleeding, dazed. And behind her, Emma, holding a gun, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Grandpa, she whispered. They have my brother. My knees buckled when she said it. Emma, my blood, holding a gun in her trembling hands, standing between two lives, mine and her brother's. The girl I bounced on my knee, taught to fish, taught to fight back against bullies, now had my life in her sights. I didn't raise my hands. I didn't plead. I just looked at her, not as a soldier, not as a weapon, but as a scared child forced to play God in a world built by cowards and liars. I understand, I said softly. They took everything from me, too. She blinked. Tears spilled. They said if I didn't stop you, he'd die. They showed me proof. They're keeping him underground, somewhere cold. I don't know where. Her voice cracked. I don't know what's real anymore. Jessica stepped forward slowly, her face torn between fury and heartbreak. Emma, listen to me, she said. They manipulated all of us, used us like pawns. But your grandfather is the only reason we're still standing. You have a choice. Right here, right now. End the cycle or become another link in their chain. Emma's hand shook. The gun lowered an inch. Behind her, Langford's voice erupted over the speakers again, colder than frost. Do it, girl. You think your brother lives if you hesitate? You think there's redemption waiting for any of you? Pull the trigger. Finish it. I stepped forward. He's bluffing. Emma's head snapped to me. He can't kill your brother, I said. Not if he needs leverage. Not if you're the last card he has left. Her grip loosened. I've lived 1,000 lifetimes in these wars, I said, and I'd trade every damn one to save your brother. But this is your decision. Not his, not mine. Silence. Nothing but her breathing. Then she dropped the gun. A scream came from the speakers. Langford's. Pure rage. I didn't waste a second. I rushed forward, grabbed Jessica and Emma, and we ran. The alarm started blaring behind us. But I knew this facility. I helped design the damn bones of it back in '89. I knew every hallway, every emergency exit, every blind spot. The building began to shake. Self-destruct protocols. Can we make it? Jessica shouted over the sirens. We have to, I growled. The final corridor loomed. The blast doors already closing. I threw Emma forward. Jessica dove. and I made it through just as a fire lit up behind me. We hit the ground outside, rolling through dirt and ash and ice, lungs burning. Silence. No pursuit. Langford was gone. That chapter burned with the rest of the ghosts. 3 months later, we were in a cabin. A real one. Somewhere green. Mountains in the distance. My grandson was with us. Rescued in the chaos. Barely alive, but healing. Emma sat beside him, never leaving his side. Jessica, and I stood on the porch. She slipped her hand into mine. "What now?" she asked. I stared at the sunrise. "We rebuild," I said. "And the clones," she whispered. "I left something for them," I said. "Something only I would understand. I don't think they'll follow." "What was it?" I smiled faintly. "The one thing they can't copy. Regret." She leaned her head on my shoulder. I closed my eyes, finally at peace. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And if you made it to the end, leave a comment below. Let us know you're still standing. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.